do what it takes to get there, I want you to repeat the words. I love myself. I love who I am.
Florence Griffith Joyner was the fastest woman who ever lived. She wasn't just an athlete. She was a global icon who changed the game with her power, style, and speed. Her world records, they're still unbroken today. But at the absolute height of her fame, at just 38 years old, she was found lifeless in her bed. The official cause of death pointed to a rare medical condition she'd unknowingly had since birth. But a wrongful death lawsuit filed against a hospital suggests a far more tragic reality, that the death of the world's fastest woman might have been preventable. So what really happened in the final days of Flo-Jo? Before the mystery, there was the magic. Florence Dolores Griffith, or Flo-Jo as the world knew her, didn't just run, she flew. She didn't just compete, she captivated. To understand the shock of her death, you first have to understand the sheer size of her life. She wasn't just an athlete, she was a cultural supernova. Florence's journey didn't start on some gilded track. She was one of 11 kids, born in Los Angeles, growing up in the Jordan Downs public housing project. From a young age, she ran. She ran to keep up with her siblings, she ran for the joy of it, and pretty soon she ran because she was faster than everybody else. Her talent was obvious, but the path to glory wasn't easy. After a great start in college, money got tight, and she had to drop out and get a job as a bank teller. For a minute, it seemed like the world might never see her full potential. But Florence Griffith was not someone you could deny. With the help of her future coach, Bob Kersey, she got back into athletics, and her star began to rise. Her first taste of the Olympics came right in her hometown at the 1984 LA Games, where she nabbed a silver medal in the 200-meter. And that's where the world got its first real glimpse of the Flo-Jo phenomenon. It wasn't just her speed that turned heads, it was her style. At a time when track uniforms were boring and basic, Flo-Jo made the track her personal runway. She had long, flowing hair, extravagantly painted 6-inch fingernails, and her now famous one-legged running suits, which she designed herself. She was a flash of color and personality in a world of conformity. Still, the years between 84 and 88 were a time of intense, quiet work. In 1987, she married fellow Olympic champ Al Joyner, who also became her coach. Under his guidance, she started a new, more powerful training program, and the results of that hard work were about to explode in a way nobody saw coming. 88 was the year Florence Griffith Joyner went from track star to legend. It started at the U.S. Olympic trials. In the 100-meter quarterfinals, she didn't just break the world record, she destroyed it. She ran a 10:49, a time so ridiculously fast that officials thought the wind gauge had to be broken. It wasn't. By the end of those trials, she had posted the 3 fastest 100-meter times ever run by a woman. The stage was set for the Seoul Olympics, and Flo-Jo did not disappoint. She was a force of nature. In the 100-meter final, she won gold, beating her closest rival by 0.3 of a second, a lifetime in sprinting. In the 200-meter, she broke the world record in the semis, only to break her own record again in the final. She floated across the finish line with a huge smile, her arms in the air, a picture of pure joy. She left Seoul with 3 gold medals and 1 silver, becoming one of the most decorated female track athletes at a single Olympics in history. Her world records in the 100 and 200 meters still stand. For more than 30 years, the fastest women on the planet have been chasing her ghost, and none have caught it. Her times feel almost mythical, a benchmark for speed that seems impossible. She retired abruptly in early 1989 at the absolute peak of her powers, saying she wanted to focus on business. She had become a global icon, designing uniforms for the Indiana Pacers, launching fashion lines, and becoming a pop culture fixture. She was Flo-Jo, the fastest woman of all time, an artist on the track, a symbol of power, grace, and unapologetic style. Her story seemed like a total triumph, but a shadow was looming, one that would follow her for the rest of her short life and explode after her death. On the morning of September 21st, 1998, the world woke up to news that just didn't seem possible. Florence Griffith Joyner, the picture of speed, strength, and life, was dead at 38. The news cycle stopped cold. It was a moment of collective disbelief. How could the woman who moved faster than anyone on earth be so suddenly still? Her husband, Al Joyner, was the one who found her. He went to check on her in their Mission Viejo, California home and discovered she wasn't breathing. Paramedics were called, but it was too late. She was gone. The first reports were thin on details, creating a void that was instantly filled with shock, grief, and a flood of questions. In the public's mind, Flo-Jo was frozen in time at that. Finish line in soul, the image of perfect health and power. The idea that she could die in her sleep, with no warning, was a deeply unsettling contradiction. The Orange County Sheriff Coroner's Office launched an investigation to figure out the cause of her death, and the entire world was watching, desperate for answers. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of tributes. Presidents, athletes, and fans from all over the globe shared their sorrow. They remembered her not just for the records, but for the flair and joy she brought to the sport. But just beneath the surface of all that grief, old whispers started, bubbling up again. The same suspicions that had shadowed her greatest moments now came back with a dark, new urgency. The mystery of her life was about to be completely overshadowed by the mystery of her death. To understand the controversy that blew up after Flo-Jo's death, you have to go back to that incredible summer of 1988. The way she went from being a very good sprinter to the undisputed fastest woman alive was just staggering. It was so dramatic that it was met with as much suspicion as it was with awe. Before 1988, her best 100-meter time was 10.96 seconds. In just a few months, she shaved nearly half a second off that, a quantum leap in a sport measured in hundredths. That, plus a visibly more muscular physique, fueled constant rumors that she was using performance-enhancing drugs. And the speculation wasn't just from fans or the media. It came from inside the track community. Fellow athletes just couldn't believe it. The Brazilian runner Joaquim Cruz famously said that in 1984, Flo-Jo was extremely feminine, but by 1988 she looked more like a man than a woman. Even the American track legend Carl Lewis suggested her success was drug-fueled, citing some very reliable sources, though he later had to walk back the claim. These weren't just random accusations. The 1980s were a messy time for track and field. Doping was a huge issue, and it all came to a head at those same 1988 Seoul Olympics, where Canadian sprinter Ben Johnson was stripped of his 100-meter gold after testing positive for steroids. The public was already on edge, and Flo-Jo, with her superhuman speed, became an easy target for suspicion. Through it all, Florence Griffith Joyner never wavered. "I know exactly what people are saying about me," she said at the time, "and it's simply not true. I don't need to use drugs. They can come and test me every week of the year if they want to. I've got nothing to hide," and the facts seemed to be on her side. She never failed a single drug test. Ever. In fact, because of all the rumors, she was tested more heavily than most. The head of the IOC's medical commission at the time, Prince Alexandre de Merode, later confirmed that Flo-Jo was specifically targeted for extra, more intense screenings during the Seoul Games. She was tested 11 times in 1988 alone. Every single test came back clean. Her husband and coach Al Joyner has always been her fiercest defender. He's argued passionately that her transformation came from a groundbreaking training program and sheer willpower, not chemicals. He talked about her relentless work ethic, a new diet, and a training regimen designed to build explosive power. To him and her supporters, the accusations were just jealousy from people who couldn't accept that a woman, a black woman with flash and style, could be that great on her own terms. Al would later say that always having to defend her legacy was a heavy burden. Instead of celebrating her, they tried to destroy her. Her sudden retirement in early 1989 right before mandatory random drug testing was set to be fully implemented, was seen by skeptics as more proof of guilt. But she insisted she was just moving on with her life, using her fame to build a business empire. So when she died so suddenly a decade later, those rumors exploded. The speculation was immediate. Had years of steroid use finally destroyed her heart? The question hung over her memory like a dark cloud. The world held its breath, waiting for the coroner's report, with many assuming it would finally deliver the proof her critics always believed was there. While the world was busy speculating, the Orange County Coroner's Office was conducting a detailed investigation. When the results were finally released on October 22, 1998, they were shocking. The report was definitive on two huge points. First, the cause of death was positional asphyxia during a severe epileptic seizure. In simple terms, she had suffocated on her pillow while having a seizure. It wasn't a heart attack, and it had nothing to do with any long-term health issues from drug use. Second, the toxicology report was completely clean. There was no evidence of steroids or any other performance-enhancing drugs in her system. The only things found were tiny amounts of Tylenol and the antihistamine Benadryl. At a press conference, a tearful Al Joyner felt vindicated. "My wife took the final, ultimate drug test," he said. "And it's what we always said. There's nothing there. Please, please give us time to grieve and just let my wife rest in peace." But what caused the seizure? The autopsy revealed a hidden medical issue that even Flo-Jo herself might not have known about. She had a congenital brain abnormality called a cavernous angioma. It's a small cluster of abnormal thin-walled blood vessels in the brain, often described as looking like a mulberry. This condition isn't cancerous and has zero connection to steroid use. It was something she was born with, a ticking time bomb hidden in her brain. It's believed that as many as 1 in 100 to 200 people have a cavernous angioma, though most never know it. While many people live their whole lives with no symptoms, the condition can make a person prone to headaches and, more importantly, seizures. The coroner explained that during her sleep, this angioma in her brain's left frontal lobe likely triggered a massive seizure. As she lay face down, the seizure would have caused her limbs to stiffen and her head to turn, pressing her face into her pillow and cutting off her air supply. It was a tragic and rare sequence of events. While seizures are common, dying from suffocation during one is not. The head of the International Amateur Athletic Federation declared, "This report ensures that Florence Griffith Joyner will be able to rest in peace." The official findings seemed to finally put the ugliest rumors to bed. She wasn't a drug cheat whose body gave out. She was the victim of a rare, hidden condition that struck without warning. But the story wasn't over. The autopsy answered, what killed her? But it accidentally opened up a new, even more tragic question. Could her death have been prevented? The answer to that would come from an incident 2 years earlier that most people had forgotten about. The coroner's report pointed to a silent, hidden killer. But there was a chilling prologue to this tragedy. In April 1996, 2 years before she died, Flo-Jo had a seizure on a flight to St. Louis. The plane made an emergency landing, and she was rushed to Barnes Jewish Hospital. She was kept overnight and, according to her family, had a series of tests, including an MRI. She was released, and the incident mostly faded from public view. But after her death, that hospital visit became the focus of a new, heartbreaking chapter. In August 2000, Al Joyner and his daughter, representing Flo-Jo's estate, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the St. Louis hospital. The lawsuit made a devastating claim that the doctors at Barnes Jewish Hospital had been negligent. The suit alleged that the medical staff had messed up. It claimed that they had improperly interpreted the results of her MRI and other tests from 1996. The family argued that her cavernous angioma, the very thing that would kill her, should have been visible on those scans. The lawsuit accused the hospital of failing to detect the brain abnormality that ultimately led to her death. The implication was staggering. If the cavernous angioma had been correctly identified in 1996, Flo-Jo would have known she was at risk for seizures, and there were treatments available. While brain surgery is risky, other preventative measures like anti-seizure medication could have been prescribed. She could have been taught about the risks, like how to sleep in a position that would prevent suffocation if she had a seizure. The lawsuit suggested that with a proper diagnosis, her death wasn't just a freak accident, it was a preventable tragedy. Of course, the hospital and doctors had their own defense, arguing they had met the standard of care and that these lesions can be hard to spot. Medical malpractice cases are incredibly complex. In the end, the case never went to a public trial. A confidential settlement was reached between Flo-Jo's family and the hospital. The terms were never disclosed, but the fact that it was settled at all speaks volumes. It added a profound layer of what if to the whole story. The whispers about drugs had been silenced by science, only to be replaced by a far more concrete and agonizing question. Was the fastest woman in the world lost? Not to scandal, but to a diagnostic error. This shifted the narrative from public suspicion to private, preventable heartbreak. While the world was processing the medical cause of Flo-Jo's death and the shocking lawsuit, a different kind of tragedy was playing out behind the scenes. Death in the family can strain any bond, but for the Griffith Joyners, it ignited a bitter and public war that would tarnish the legacy Flo-Jo left behind. The fights were over money, control, and the memory of Florence herself. The first sign of trouble was that Flo-Jo's will couldn't be found. When the legal deadline to file it passed, a court was forced to declare that she had died intestate, without a will. This single issue threw her entire estate into chaos and kicked off years of legal battles between the two most important people in her life, her husband, Al Joyner, and her mother, Florence Griffith. The fights were messy and painful. A major point of conflict was a house that Al owned, where Flo-Jo's mother had been living rent-free for years. Her mother claimed she'd been promised she could live there for life. After Flo-Jo died, Al reportedly tried to evict his mother-in-law, leading to a storm of lawsuits, but it went deeper than property. It was a battle over who got to carry on Flo-Jo's legacy. Both Al and her mother started separate charitable foundations in her name. They fought in court for years over who had the right to use Flo-Jo's name and likeness. The conflict hit its lowest point on the first anniversary of Flo-Jo's death, when her own mother filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Al Joyner. The suit was vague, but alleged that he had failed to exercise reasonable care and that harmful or offensive touching had caused her death. Even though the coroner had clearly ruled out foul play, the lawsuit was a shocking public display of the family's meltdown. When a reporter asked her mother if she really believed Al had caused her daughter's death, she hesitated and replied, "In a lot of ways." The lawsuit was eventually dropped and was widely seen as a tactic in the war over the estate. With no will and a family at war, the court had to bring in a neutral administrator to divide up her assets. It took nearly 5 years of legal fighting before a settlement was finally reached in 2003. The agreement split what was left of the estate between Al Joyner and Florence Griffith, but the long court battles had eaten up much of its value. It was a sad, messy end to a story that had once been so inspiring. The unity and love that had been part of Flo-Jo's public image had dissolved into a public spectacle of grief and greed. The story of Florence Griffith Joyner is one of breathtaking triumph and profound tragedy. On one hand, there's the legend, the fastest woman of all time, an athlete whose records have become immortal, a seemingly unreachable peak of human speed. She was a cultural revolutionary who smashed conventions. With the same force, she smashed records, proving that strength and femininity weren't mutually exclusive. Her vibrant one-legged suits are as much a part of her legacy as her gold medals. On the other hand, there's the mystery. Her sudden death at 38 was a brutal reminder of how fragile life is. The official cause, a fatal seizure from a hidden brain defect silenced the ugly rumors of steroid use that had dogged her career. The autopsy was her final drug test, and she passed it. But that wasn't the end. The lawsuit against the hospital introduced a haunting new possibility that her death might have been prevented, and the aftermath revealed a family fractured by grief, fighting over the memory of the woman they all loved. So what's the real story of Flo-Jo? The truth is, all of these things are true at once. She was a once-in-a-generation talent. She was the victim of a tragic medical condition, and her passing left behind a complex and painful human drama. Her legacy isn't just in the record books, it's in the questions she leaves behind about fame, suspicion, and the weight of being a phenomenon. She remains an icon, a mystery, and a legend, forever fast, forever young, and forever fascinating. What part of Flo-Jo's story do you find the most compelling? Her incredible achievements, the medical mystery, or the controversies that followed? Her? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more deep dives into the stories of iconic figures, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.